Please, no! Adaora screamed, her voice raw with fear as she struggled to break free. This can't be happening. Someone, help me. Her tears soaked her cheeks as she fought with every ounce of strength she had left. God, save me. Please don't let this happen. This is Chinwee's story. Adaora, lovingly called Chinwee by her family, stood in the living room as her brother Chimobi dragged her suitcase to the door. She was dressed neatly in a simple but elegant outfit, ready for her 4-hour journey from Owerri to Akka. Yet her heart was pounding. It was the first time she was leaving her home, and the thought filled her with anxiety. Studying in Anambra State wasn't what she had dreamed of for herself. It was late Mazi Nicholas's dream to see his daughter become a lawyer. He would drive her to the jam center and wait till she finished her exam, before driving her to the house. Maisie had slept and never woke up. It shook Adaora to the bone. He was her encouragement. Adaora, don't worry, God is going to give you admission. You'll become my lawyer. Don't worry, I'll be there the day they call you to bar, he said while poking her ribs. Adaora's tears dried as she began to laugh. Mazi Nicholas took his daughter to Spar store that evening to spoil her. It's not your fault, my daughter. You read well. Imagine you scored 270 in JAMB and they didn't give you admission. What requirements did they use to give Ngozi the daughter of Mazi Ikenga? Mazi Nicholas said, trying to cheer his daughter. Nigeria and corruption are 5 and 6. There's no way you can tell me money didn't run hand. Maisie. Nicholas hissed. Adaora chuckled. Maisie Nicholas was on high blood pressure drugs. The shrieking scream that left her mother's throat when she found her husband cold and dead made Chinwee's legs become boiled spaghetti. She struggled not to pass out. She dragged herself to her parents' room. When she saw her father's lifeless body, she thought she was dreaming. She thought her dad was sleeping, that he would wake up. It became a reality to her when she saw her father's body in the casket, and then being lowered to the ground. Chinwee, you've finally gotten the admission to read law. Your father will be in heaven rejoicing, Dorcas said as she hugged her daughter. Adaora was wearing a white flare gown. Her hair was braided into a long cornrow style. The color was so black as charcoal. Her skin glittered like the rays of the sun, so fair like Dorcas's skin. She was slim like a model, with an average bust that would enchant any man with eyes. Adaora smiled to hide the pains inside her sad eyes. She wanted to remain on her mother's shoulder to pour out her pains, to let the water flow. Adaora, you were born and raised in a Christian home. You were introduced to God in your infant age. You know what the Bible says about sin. Mrs. Dorcas said, still holding her daughter's hands in hers. We've heard and have seen many girls and boys who were good Christians until they got to school, where their parents cannot see them. They turned their backs on God and joined others to sin. Mrs. Dorcas said, but you, my daughter, you're a child of God. You won't disappoint me or your father. You didn't go to school to go and become wild. Your virginity, you must bring it back home. I married your dad as virgin and he honored me all his days. He respected me for that singular act. Your roommates will try to make you change from who you're and then to live a reckless life. Always remember your family. Remember where you're coming from. Mrs. Dorcas said, Mom, I've heard you. I'll hold on to God. Adaora promised. My sister Azuka stays close to your school. Always visit her. And don't worry, your uncles should keep holding on to your dad's properties. God won't shame us. I'll work hard to make sure you never lack anything in school, even if it takes me to sell my last wrapper. The woman said, Dot. Collins, please fetch me my head tie. Let me pray for your sister. Dorcas said. They held their hands together, the 5 of them, and prayed passionately. It was the abrupt honking sound from Brother Chibuiki's car that made Dorcas to end her prayer. Chimobi helped her carry her suitcase to the trunk of the car. Dorcas carried the Ghana must-go bag with her utensils and gas cookers. Collins carried her second suitcase. Adaora walked like a princess into the car. Brother Chibuike took her from Owerri North to Onitsha Park, where she boarded an A10 Cedars bus. She waited for another hour before the bus was full. A preacher came to the door of the bus just before the driver left the park. He was wearing a blue suit that looked like all the colors had been bleached out. He prayed for them and asked for offering. Adaora hissed at him and plugged in her earpiece. They arrived at Akka about 3 hours later. Adaora boarded taxi that took her to hostel. She had made her hostel payments online. She had already been given her hostel room. Southeast University was such a beautiful place to be. The architectural design of the buildings were entrapping. Sometimes she felt she was abroad, not in Nigeria. Some boys offered to help her carry her luggage to the first floor where her room was. Adaora was stretched to her limit. She couldn't lift any of the suitcases. The young men worked together like soldier ants to lift her boxes one after the other. Her roommates took it up from them. When the boys were at the veranda, they heartily and noisily welcomed Adaora. She felt so relieved because she had been wondering if she would meet nice and kind friends. It was too difficult for Adaora to make friends. Most friends she made ended up being jealous and envious of her. Her beauty overshadowed them. They hated the admiration of men for Adaora. So they would begin to resent her. She learnt to be alone. But in the new hostel, she felt she was genuinely being loved by her new friends and roommate, which sweetened and softened her heart. She took her bath and settled in before her roommates began to ask questions that she wasn't ready to answer. The campus was breathtaking. Trees lined the sides of the smooth, black asphalt road, and the students walked by, dressed modestly but confidently. Adaora pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. This was real. She had finally arrived at Southeast University. "Have you gone to the infirmary for your medical checkup?" Neka asked. She was a fresher too, but she had resumed weeks earlier. Chinwee's late arrival was due to her father, Mazi Nicholas's death, which had delayed her as she stayed home for the burial. She was almost a month late. "Where is the infirmary?" Chinwei asked, still a little overwhelmed by the size of the campus. "It's near the admin building. Do you know where that is?" Neka asked. "I have no idea. This place is huge, and the tall buildings all look the same. I need someone to show me around for at least a week before I can figure things out," Chinwei replied. The two girls laughed. "It was just as confusing for me when I first got here. I'll help you find your way," Neka offered. Then, with a playful grin, she added, "But you'll have to share your food with me when you start cooking." The other two girls sharing the one-room apartment with them burst out laughing. "Neka, you're such a foodie," Gloria, a final-year student, teased. "Adaora just arrived last night. She hasn't even unpacked her bags, and you're already talking about food. One day, Neka, you'll accidentally eat dog meat or something even worse." Agatha, their fourth roommate, added, shaking her head. "Who says I haven't eaten dog meat before?" Neka retorted with a grin. "It was tasty and oily." The girls exploded into laughter. "Neka, you're unbelievable," Gloria said, giggling. "Remind me never to eat anything you cook. I fed you all dog meat before. You just didn't know it," Neka teased, making the girls scream in mock horror. "10 minutes, girls. Let me take a quick bath and I'll take you to the clinic," Neka said. Neka came out of the bathroom a short while later, wearing a Fela Kuti-inspired jean trousers and a white shirt. Chinwei wore a simple white polo and a knee-length blue denim skirt. Neka grabbed Chinwei's hand like they'd been friends forever and led her outside. Neka was like a human radio, chattering nonstop. Chinwei, on the other hand, was a good listener. She only chimed in every now and then to keep the conversation going. "Hey, God's love! What are you doing here?" Neka suddenly called out to a young man standing near the clinic. The boy looked flustered. "Have you fallen sick again?" "You're always here," Neka teased. "It's like you're trying to finish all the medicine in this clinic." God's love, clearly embarrassed, clutched the book in his hand tightly. But it slipped and fell. As he bent to pick it up, Chinwei bent down to help him, and their hands accidentally touched. A strange spark passed between them. He looked into her eyes for a brief moment before quickly turning away. His face flushed, and he grabbed his notebook and hurried off. Neka burst into laughter, almost rolling on the floor. "Neka, that was so mean. You embarrassed him," Chinwei said, shaking her head. "A beg? His own is too much," Neka replied. "He's too churchy, but I won't lie, that boy is smart." After finishing up at the clinic, they were told to come back the next day for Chinwei's test results. Neka then took Chinwei to the library, and later to the cafeteria. The moment they entered, heads turned. Boys couldn't stop staring at Chinwei. "Do you all plan to swallow her whole with your eyes?" Neka snapped at one boy who was staring too hard. The boy grinned sheepishly. "Sorry, my bad. She's just too beautiful." "Are you a mermaid?" he asked Chinwei with a nervous laugh. Chinwei was too embarrassed to even smile. If you don't leave our table now, I'll call security to throw you out for harassment, Nika barked. Or should I charge you for sexual harassment, you creep? The boy raised his hands in surrender. No harm intended, he muttered as he hurried back to his table. His friends laughed at him loudly, making the entire cafeteria turn to look. Their food arrived. Nika dug into her rice like a hungry lioness, while Chinwe ate gracefully, taking small bites. But she could still feel the boy's eyes on her, following every movement of her spoon as it went from her plate to her mouth. She quickly finished her meal and hurried out of the cafeteria. As they left, a young man wearing a navy blue senator outfit came running after them. He had a bright smile plastered on his face. "Hello, ladies," he greeted. "Yes? What do you want?" Nika said, eyeing him suspiciously. The boy laughed. "I didn't come for you," he said to Nika. "I came to talk to your friend." Nika gasped dramatically and clutched her chest. "What? How dare you ignore me?" The boy turned to Chinwe. "Please, can I have your number?" he asked sincerely. "The moment I saw you in the restaurant, my heart stopped. I don't think I can breathe without your number." Nika stepped between them, her eyes blazing. "Listen here, you overgrown buffoon with the head of a hippopotamus. This is my friend. Go feed your lust somewhere else. Watch a movie or... I don't care. But if you mess with her, I'll show you what it means to cross a Lagos-raised girl." The boy, though taller than Nika, was clearly intimidated by her fiery demeanor. He turned and walked away, his friends laughing at him as he reached his car. You're really fire for fire," Chinwe said, chuckling. Nika grinned. "Well, someone has to defend you." "Let's go to the law department now. I'll show you around," Nika said, linking arms with Chinwe as they walked toward the 4-story building that housed the department. By the third day, Adaora had completed all the formalities for her departmental registration. She felt out of breath as she and Nika entered the large law building. As they approached the door to the hall, Chinwe froze. "Come on, let's go inside," Nika urged her, nudging her forward. "I'm nervous. What if they tease me?" Chinwe whispered. Nika giggled. "Tease you? What for? Do you have something weird on your face?" Chinwe sighed and reluctantly walked in. As soon as she stepped inside, the entire class erupted in cheerful laughter. "Welcome, Mrs. Latecomer Chinwe," some of them called out playfully. Chinwe turned to Nika, who was grinning from ear to ear. Her mischievous friend had set her up for this moment of public embarrassment. Nika then proudly introduced Chinwe to their 80-plus course mates. After the introductions, she led Chinwe to her desk and casually grabbed a male student's backpack, tossing it onto an empty seat at the back. "God's love, keep this bag for Ugochukwu," she said with a smirk. "I've kicked him out of my seat." God's love didn't even respond. He just stared at her as though she were a TV show playing right in front of him. For Chinwe, it all felt like a dream. She was finally here, sitting among her classmates as a university student. The first lecturer entered, a lively woman who taught Use of English 101. Her energy made the class enjoyable. At one point, she called Chinwe to stand and answer some questions. For a moment, Chinwe froze, unable to find her voice. But after gathering her courage, she answered the questions. "I love your hair," the lecturer said, walking closer to Chinwe. "Did you relax it?" "No, Ma. It's all natural," Chinwe replied shyly. "It's beautiful," the lecturer said, gently touching Chinwe's thick, curly hair. Then she turned to address the entire class. "Remember your assignment. It must be on my desk by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. A good lawyer must have an excellent command of English." She added humorously, "Not the kind of English where someone says in court, 'She come, she came, she cummed.'" The class burst into laughter. "Course rep, I want all the assignments collected before my afternoon class. Let's see if you're actually learning," she said before stepping out of the hall. The class immediately turned into a noisy marketplace as everyone started chatting. Chinwe glanced back and noticed God's love staring at her again, his eyes fixed on the back of her head. When their eyes met, he quickly turned away, looking flustered, almost as though he couldn't control his limbs. Chinwe bit her lip, trying to hold back her laughter. Neka had wandered off and was making her usual rounds across the classroom, playfully teasing people. Meanwhile, Chinwe remained seated, quietly observing her new classmates. At around 1 p.m., another lecturer entered the room. The class immediately fell silent. The man had a bald head and a slightly protruding stomach. "You there at the back," he bellowed at a student who hadn't yet taken his seat. "Sit down. If you're here to fool around, I'm not. I don't tolerate foolishness in my class. Next time you disrupt my lecture, I'll have you in front of the Senate, answering questions you can't even begin to understand." He continued his lecture, walking through the rows while the notes displayed on the whiteboard from his system. As he passed Chinwe's desk, he suddenly stopped and stared at her. Chinwe felt her breath catch in her throat. She didn't understand why he was looking at her like that. Feeling uncomfortable, she quickly turned her focus back to the board. "Who is that lecturer?" Chinwe whispered to Neka after class. "That's Professor Magnus Maduka Cletus," Neka replied, gathering her books. "He's bad news. Most students are terrified of him. If you get on his bad side, you won't graduate until he's drained every bit of patience you have." "Then why was he staring at me like that?" Chinwe asked, confused. "Pray he doesn't take an interest in you," Neka said ominously. As they left the lecture hall, someone bumped into Chinwe. Her books almost fell. "Oh, God's love, must you always be so clumsy? Why do you keep running into my friend?" Neka scolded. "Sorry, it's my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going," God's love said, looking genuinely apologetic. He bent down to pick up Chinwe's books, his face red with embarrassment. Chinwe smiled and bent down to help him. "My name is God's love Chinadu," he said nervously, extending his hand toward Chinwe. His hand shook slightly. "I'm Adaora Nicholas Azubuike," Chinwe said, shaking his hand with a warm smile. God's love quickly disappeared back into the class, his face still red. That's an odd guy," Chinwe commented as they walked out. Neka chuckled. "Odd? I think he's fallen head over heels for you. You should be careful with these over-churchy types. They're unpredictable." Chinwe laughed. "I'm not ready for a relationship, Neka. I want to focus on my studies and make my mom proud." "I've heard you, Madam Serious Student," Neka replied with a playful smirk. "By the way, do you know the way back to the hostel?" Chinwe nodded. "Good. Take my bag. I need to see my boyfriend off campus. I'll be back by 8 p.m., Neka said, handing her bag to Chinwe. "Your boyfriend?" "In this hot afternoon?" Chinwe asked, surprised. "Yes. I need to get some romance today. My parents never gave me any freedom at home. Now that I'm here, I'm living my life to the fullest," Neka declared as she hopped into a minivan headed toward the campus exit. Chinwe shook her head and smiled as she walked back to the hostel, carrying both her bag and Neka's. She was slowly getting used to the chaos and excitement of campus life. At 10 p.m., Adaora and Neka left the hostel and headed toward the law department building to study. But after a few minutes, Chinwe grew annoyed. Neka had stopped along the way to chat with a boy and was completely absorbed in their conversation. Chinwe couldn't understand how Neka was so carefree with boys. She hugged them as if they were close family or something more. Frustrated, Chinwe walked ahead to the lecture hall alone. As soon as she stepped inside, her eyes landed on God's love. The moment he noticed her, he looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him up. His nervousness made him clumsy. He dropped his book and pen not once, but 3 times. Chinwe fought hard to hold back her laughter, but his friends had no such restraint. Their loud laughter echoed across the hall, and she felt a pang of sympathy for him. Instead of watching him struggle, Chinwe decided to approach him. "Hello, God's love," she greeted in a soft, melodic voice. He slowly raised his head and stuttered, Good evening, Chinwe." "Would you like to join me at the front?" Chinwe asked with a warm smile. "Yes, I would love to," he replied, quickly gathering his books and clutching them tightly to his chest as he followed her to the front seat. "Why do you act so nervous?" Chinwe asked curiously. God's love hesitated before answering. I don't know why, but I can't be myself when I'm around you," he admitted. Chinwe was surprised. She wasn't usually this bold, but with him, she felt comfortable and relaxed. "I don't bite," she teased. "You're acting strange around me, and it's giving me weird vibes." God's Love nodded shyly. "Can we be friends?" Chinwe asked. God's Love's eyes lit up, and he nodded eagerly. "All right then, let's focus on our studies," Chinwe said, opening her book. 2 hours later, Neka walked into the hall, her voice breaking the silence. Well, the power couple has arrived," she teased with a playful hint of jealousy. "Have you replaced me already? Should I have waited for you while you wasted time gossiping with your admirer?" Chinwe shot back. "God's Love, leave my friend alone and go back to your buddies," Neka demanded, her tone sharp. "God's Love, stay where you are," Chinwe said firmly. "I'm the one who asked you to sit with me." "You really won't leave, huh?" Neka muttered as she plopped down at a desk behind them. She flipped through the pages of her book but kept quiet. The trio walked back to the hostel around 2 a.m., with Neka and Chinwe stubbornly refusing to speak to each other. But as the week went on, Chinwe grew closer to God's Love. His quiet, sincere presence became something she looked forward to, and Neka eventually accepted him into their circle of friends. One sunny morning, the lecture hall was packed with second-year law students for a class on administrative law. Professor Magnus Maduka Cletus was the lecturer. Some students whispered nervously when he entered. He was known for being harsh and unforgiving. "Some of you think you're tough," he began, pacing the room. "But remember this. I hold your precious CGPA in the palm of my hand. I am the alpha and omega of this department." The room fell into an uneasy silence. "If I ask you to do something and you dare say no to my face, what nerve you must have," he sneered. "I don't care who you know or who you think you are. If you don't give me what I want, you'll keep repeating my course until you regret ever stepping foot in this university." He slammed his suitcase shut and glared at the students. "Some of you act like no one can touch you, like you're untouchable. Fine. Let's see how long your pride lasts." With that, he walked out, leaving the class buzzing with whispers. Neka noticed Chinwe's pale expression. "Chinwe, what's wrong? You look scared," she asked. "I'm fine," Chinwe replied, but her voice was shaky. "Stop lying. I can see the fear in your eyes," Neka insisted. "I'm just tired. I have a headache." "Let's go back to the hostel," Chinwe said, gathering her things. Back at the hostel, Chinwe tried to sleep, but her phone rang, waking her up. The number was unfamiliar. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, baby. Were you already asleep?" The voice on the other end made her heart stop. It was Professor Akeen. Chinwe stepped out onto the veranda so her roommates wouldn't overhear. "Yes, sir, I was sleeping before your call woke me up," Chinwe replied, keeping her voice steady. "And please, sir, I'm not your baby." "Why are you playing hard to get?" the professor asked smoothly. "I'm wealthy. I can make sure you lack nothing. You'll graduate with a first-class degree if you just say yes." "Sir, I'm a Christian. I can't trade my values for grades, and you know I'm capable of passing your exams on my own," Chinwe replied respectfully. "Just once, Chinwe," he pleaded. "Let me taste you. You're too beautiful. How can I resist?" "Sir, my body belongs to God. What you're asking is against my beliefs. I'm not interested, and I need to rest now. Please don't call me again tonight." Without waiting for a reply, Chinwe ended the call and returned to bed, her heart pounding in her chest. Professor Akina had just finished his lecture. As he packed up his suitcase, the lecture hall was silent. The students knew he had a terrible temper. If anyone annoyed him during class, he would throw his textbook at them. Yet, on rare days when he was in a good mood, he laughed like someone who had just received a visa to heaven. "You should all turn in your assignments to the course rep," he instructed. "Nedu, I want them on my desk by tomorrow morning." He turned to leave but stopped at the entrance and looked straight at Adaora. "Adaora Nicholas Azubuike, see me in my office," he said firmly. Adaora felt like her body had turned to ice. "I mean immediately," he added before leaving the hall. Nika leaned toward Adaora. "This man is becoming a serious problem. You need to do something before he follows through with his threats," she whispered, anger flashing in her eyes. "But what can I do?" Adaora asked helplessly. "There are many things I would do if I were you," Neka said, her voice tight with anger. "I'd put him in his place." "I'm not like you, Neka. God knows I'll never do what he's asking me to do," Adaora replied as she got up and left the hall. Adaora stood in front of the professor's office and knocked softly. "Come in," called a voice from inside. Her palms were drenched in sweat as she stepped in. "I'll be with you in a moment," Professor Akena said, without looking up from his laptop. His eyes stayed glued to the screen as he shuffled through some files on his desk. Minutes passed before he finally acknowledged her presence. My baby," he began, spinning his office chair as he spoke. "Why are you giving me such a hard time?" He leaned forward. "Okay, I get it. You want money." He reached into the pocket of his gray suit and pulled out a fresh bundle of 1,000 Naira notes. "This is 100,000 Naira," he said, spinning the chair again as he pushed the bundle toward her. Adaora stared at the money as if it were cursed. "Sir, what is this money for?" she asked cautiously. The professor suddenly stood up, his chair screeching loudly. He straightened his suit and walked over to her. "You know what I want," he said, his voice low and suggestive. "You make my fantasies come alive. Don't act like you don't understand." Before she could move, he placed his hand on her shoulder and then on her chest. Adaora flinched and stepped back, turning toward the door to leave. But before she could open it, he pressed his hand against the door, pinning her in place. "Sir, stop it!" she cried. "Don't pretend to be innocent," he sneered. "I checked your file. You're 22 years old. What's the big deal? You wouldn't be doing anything wrong. All the girls on campus do it. That's how they get money for upkeep. And good grades." Adaora felt her heart racing. "Sir, I'm a Christian. I can't do this," she said firmly. He laughed bitterly. "Oh, spare me that nonsense. Is it the money? Is it not enough? Fine, I'll make it 200,000. No? How about 400,000? I'm a millionaire, Chinwei. You'll never lack anything if you're with me." Adaora squirmed under his weight, trying to free herself, but he was too strong. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. "Let me go, sir!" Adaora cried, her voice trembling. The professor quickly covered her mouth with his hand. "Who is it?" he called out, trying to sound calm. Tell us in the comment box what happened with Adaora. If you want to see the next part of the story, give 500 likes. And if you want the story to come faster, subscribe my channel